We will continue argument this morning in Case 11-398, the Department of Health and Human Services versus Florida. General Riley.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the Court, the Affordable Care Act addresses a fundamental and enduring problem in our health care system and our economy. Insurance has become the predominant means of paying for health care in this country. Insurance has become the predominant means of paying for health care in this country. For most Americans, for more than 80% of Americans, the insurance system does provide effective access. But for more than 40 million Americans who do not have access to health insurance, either through their employer or through government programs such as Medicare or Medicaid, the system does not work. Those individuals must resort to the individual market, and that market does not provide affordable health insurance. It does not do so because the multi-billion-dollar subsidies that are available for the employer market are not available in the individual market. It does not do so because ERISA and HIPAA regulations that preclude discrimination against people based on their medical history do not apply in the individual market. That is an economic problem, and it begets another.
Why aren't those problems that the federal government can address directly?
They can address it directly, Justice Scalia, and they are addressing it directly through this act by regulating the means by which health care is purchased. That is the way this act works. Under the Commerce Clause, what Congress has done is to enact reforms of the insurance market directed at the individual insurance market that preclude discrimination based on pre-existing conditions, that require guaranteed issue community rating. And it uses and the minimum coverage provision is necessary to carry into execution those insurance reforms.
Can you create commerce in order to regulate it?
That's not what's going on here, Justice Kennedy, and we're not seeking to defend the law on that basis. In this case, what is being regulated is the method of financing the purchase of health care. That itself is economic activity with substantial effects on interstate commerce. And
so any self-purchasing, anything I if I'm in any market at all, my failure to purchase something in that market subjects me to regulation?
No, that's not our position at all, Justice Scalia. In the healthcare market, the healthcare market is characterized by the fact that aside from the few groups that Congress chose to exempt from the minimum coverage requirement, those who for religious reasons don't participate, those who are incarcerated, Indian tribes, virtually everybody else is either in that market or will be in that market. And the distinguishing feature of that is that people cannot generally control when they enter that market or what they need when they enter that market.
The same, it seems to me, would be true, say, for the market in emergency services. Police, fire, ambulance, roadside assistance, whatever. You don't know when you're going to need it. You're not sure that you will. But the same is true for health care. You don't know if you're going to need a heart transplant or if you ever will. So there's a market there. In some extent, we all participate in it. So can the government require you to buy a cell phone because that would facilitate responding when you need emergency services? You can just dial 911 no matter where you are?
No, Mr. Chief Justice, I think that's different. I don't think we think of that as a market. This is a market. This is market regulation. And in addition, you have a situation in this market not only where people enter involuntarily as to when they enter and won't be able to control what they need, what they enter, but
that seems to me that's the same as in my hypothetical. You don't know when you're going to need police assistance. You can't predict the extent to emergency response that you'll need. But when you do, and the government provides it, I thought that was an important part of your argument, that when you need health care, the government will make sure you get it. Well, when you need police assistance or fire assistance or ambulance assistance, the government is going to make sure to the best extent it can that you get it.
I think the fundamental difference, Mr. Chief Justice, is that that's not an issue of market regulation. This is an issue of market regulation, and that's how Congress looked at this problem. There is a market. Insurance is provided through a market system.
Do you think there is a market for burial services?
For burial services?
Yes.
Yes, Justice Alito, I think there is.
All right, suppose that you and I walked around downtown Washington at lunch hour and we found a couple of healthy young people and we stopped them and we said, you know what you're doing? You are financing your burial services right now because eventually you're going to die and somebody's going to have to pay for it. And if you don't have burial insurance or you haven't saved money for it, you're going to shift the cost to somebody else. Isn't that a very artificial way of talking about what somebody is doing? And if that's true, why isn't it equally artificial to say that somebody who's doing absolutely nothing about health care is financing health care services?
I think it's completely different. And the reason is that the burial example is not – the difference is here you are regulating the method by which you are paying for something else, health care. And the insurance requirement, I think the key thing here is my friends on the other side acknowledge that it is within the authority of Congress under Article I, under the Commerce Power, to impose guaranteed issue and community rating forms, to impose a minimum coverage provision. Their argument is just that it has to occur at the point of sale.
I don't see the difference. You can get burial insurance, you can get health insurance. Most people are going to need health care, almost everybody. Everybody is going to be buried or cremated at some point.
Well, one big difference, Justice Alito, is you don't have the cost shifting to other market participants.
Sure you do, because if you don't have money, then the state is going to pay for it. Or a family member is going to pay for it.
That's a difference, and it's a significant difference. That in this situation, one of the economic effects Congress is addressing is that the many billions of dollars of uncompensated costs are transferred directly to other market participants. It's transferred directly to other market participants because healthcare providers charge higher rates in order to cover the cost of uncompensated care, and insurance companies reflect those higher rates in higher premiums, which Congress found translates to $1,000 per family.
Isn't that really a small part of what the mandate is doing? You can correct me if these figures are wrong, but it appears to me that the CBO has estimated that the average premium for a single insurance policy in the non-group market will be roughly $5,800 in 2016. Respondents, the economists who supported the respondents, estimate that a young, healthy individual targeted by the mandate on average consumes about $854 in health services each year. So the mandate is forcing these people to provide a huge subsidy to the insurance companies for other purposes that the Act wishes to serve. But if those figures are right, isn't it the case that what this mandate is really doing is not requiring the people who are subject to it to pay for the services that they are going to consume? It is requiring them to subsidize services that will be received by somebody else.
No, I do think that's what the respondents argue. It's just not right. I think it really gets to a fundamental problem with it.
If you're going to have insurance, that's how insurance works.
A, it is how insurance works, but B, the problem that they're identifying is not that problem. The guaranteed issue and community rating reforms do not have the effect of forcing insurance companies to take on lots of additional people who they then can't afford to cover because they tend to be the sick. And that is, in fact, the exact opposite is what happens here. When you enact guaranteed issue and community rating reforms and you do so in the absence of a minimum coverage provision, it's not that insurance companies take on more and more people and then need a subsidy to cover it. It's that fewer and fewer people end up with insurance because the rates are not regulated. Insurance companies, when they have to offer guaranteed issue and community rating, they're entitled to make a profit. They charge rates sufficient to cover only the sick population because health.
Could you help me with this? Assume for the moment, you may disagree. Assume for the moment that this is unprecedented. This is a step beyond what our cases have allowed, the affirmative duty to act to go into commerce. If that is so, do you not have a heavy burden of justification? I understand that we must presume laws are constitutional. But even so, when you are changing the relation of the individual to the government in this, what we can stipulate is, I think, a unique way, do you not have a heavy burden of justification to show authorization under the Constitution?
So, two things about that, Justice Kennedy. First, we think this is regulation of people's participation in the health care market. And all this minimum coverage provision does is say that instead of requiring insurance at the point of sale, that Congress has the authority under the commerce power and the necessary proper power to ensure that people have insurance in advance of the point of sale because of the unique nature of this market, because this is a market in which although most of the population is in the market most of the time, 83% visit a physician every year, 96% over a 5-year period. So virtually everybody in society is in this market, and you've got to pay for the health care you get. The predominant way in which it's paid for is insurance, and the respondents agree that Congress could require that you have insurance in order to get health care or forbid health care from being provided.
Why do you define the market that broadly? Health care. It may well be that everybody needs health care sooner or later, but not everybody needs a heart transplant. Not everybody needs a liver transplant.
That's correct, but you never know whether you're going to
Could you
that
define
person.
the market? Everybody has to buy food sooner or later, so you define the market as food. Therefore, everybody's in the market. Therefore, you can make people buy broccoli.
No, it's quite different. It's quite different. The food market, while it shares that trait that everybody's in it, it is not a market in which your participation is often unpredictable and often involuntary. It is not a market in which you often don't know before you go in what you need, and it is not a market in which if you go in and seek to obtain a product or service, you will get it even if you...
Is that a principled basis for distinguishing this from other situations? I mean, you could also say, well, the person subject to this has blue eyes. That would indeed distinguish it from other situations. Is it a principled basis? It's a basis that explains why the government is doing this. But is it a basis which shows that this is not going beyond what the system of enumerated powers allows the government to do?
Yes, for two reasons. First, this is the test, as this Court has articulated it, is Congress regulating economic activity with a substantial effect on interstate commerce. The way in which this statute satisfies the test is on the basis of the factors that I have identified.
Mr. Verrilli, I thought that your main point is that unlike food or any other market, when you make the choice not to buy insurance, even though you have every intent in the world to self-insure, to save for it, when disaster strikes, you may not have the money. And the tangible result of it is, we were told, there was one brief that Maryland hospital care bills 7% more because of these uncompensated costs. The families pay $1,000 more than they would if there were no uncompensated costs. I thought what was unique about this is it's not my choice whether I want to buy a product to keep me healthy, but the cost that I'm foisting on other people if I don't buy the product sooner rather than later.
That is, and that is definitely a difference that distinguishes this market and justifies this as a regulation.
Right, so if that is your
activity.
difference, I'm somewhat uncertain about your answers to, for example, Justice Kennedy asked, can you, under the Commerce Clause, Congress create commerce where previously none existed?
Well,
I thought the answer to that was, since McCulloch versus Maryland, when the court said Congress could create the Bank of the United States, which did not previously exist, which job was to create commerce that did not previously exist. Since that time, the answer's been yes. I would have thought that your answer can the government, in fact, require you to buy cell phones or buy burials, that if we propose comparable situations, if we have, for example, a uniform United States system of paying for every burial, such as Medicare burial, Medicaid burial, CHIP burial, ERISA burial, and emergency burial beside the side of the road, and Congress wanted to rationalize that system, wouldn't the answer be yes? Of course they could. And the same with the computers, or the same with the cell phones if you're driving by the side of the highway and there is a federal emergency service, just as you say you have to buy certain mufflers for your car that don't hurt the environment. You could say, I mean, you see, doesn't it depend on the situation?
It does, Justice Breyer, and if Congress were to enact laws like that, we
would be up here
my responsibility.
All right, so then the
defend them, and I would defend them on a rationale like that. But I do think that we are advancing a narrower rationale.
But then the question is whether or not there are any limits on the Commerce Clause. Can you identify for us some limits on the Commerce Clause?
Yes. The rationale purely under the Commerce Clause that we're advocating here would not justify forced purchases of commodities for the purpose of stimulating demand. It would not justify purchases of insurance for the purposes in situations in which insurance doesn't serve as the method of payment.
But why not? If Congress says that interstate commerce is affected, isn't, according to your view, that the end of the analysis?
No. We think that the difference between those situations and this situation is that in those situations, Your Honor, Congress would be moving to create commerce. Here, Congress is regulating existing commerce, economic activity that is already going on, people's participation in the healthcare market, and is regulating to deal with existing effects of existing commerce.
That, it seems to me, is, and it's a passage in your reply brief that I didn't quite grasp. It's the same point. You say health insurance is not purchased for its own sake, like a car or broccoli. It is a means of financing healthcare consumption and covering universal risks. Well, a car or broccoli aren't purchased for their own sake either. They're purchased for the sake of transportation or, in broccoli, covering the need for food. I don't understand that distinction.
The difference, Mr. Chief Justice, is that health insurance is the means of payment for health care.
Well, now that's a significant — I'm sorry.
And broccoli is not the means of payment for anything else. And
it's the means of satisfying a basic human need, just as your insurance is the means of satisfying.
I do think that's the difference between existing commerce, activity in the market already occurring, the people in the healthcare market purchasing, obtaining healthcare services, and the creation of commerce. And the principle that we're advocating here under the Commerce Clause does not take the step of justifying the creation of commerce. This is a regulation.
Can we go back to, and Justice Breyer asked a question and it kind of interrupted your answer to my question, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I thought a major point of your argument was that the people who don't participate in this market are making it much more expensive for the people who do. That is, they will get, a goodly number of them will get services that they can't afford at the point when they need them, and the result is that everybody else's premiums get raised. So it's not your free choice just to do something for yourself. What you do is going to affect others, affect them in a major way.
That absolutely is a justification for Congress's action here. That is existing economic activity that Congress is regulating by means of this rule.
You could say that about buying a car. If people don't buy cars, the price that those who do buy cars pay will have to be higher. So you can say, in order to bring the price down, You are hurting these other people by not buying a car.
That is not what we're saying,
That's
Justice
not,
Scalia.
it's not
That is
what
not,
you're saying. I thought it was. I thought you're saying other people are going to have to pay more for insurance because you're not buying it.
No, it's because you're going in the healthcare market, you're going into the market without the ability to pay for what you get, getting the healthcare service anyway as a result of the social norms that allow to which we've obligated ourselves. So that people
don't obligate yourself to that. Why?
Well, I can't imagine that the Commerce Clause would forbid Congress from taking into account this deeply embedded social norm.
You can do it, but does that expand your ability to issue mandates to the people?
This is not a purchase mandate. This is a law that regulates the method of paying for a service that the class of people to whom it applies are consuming or inevitably will consume.
General, I see or have seen 3 strands of arguments in your briefs, and one of them is echoed today. The first strand that I've seen is that Congress can pass any necessary laws to affect those powers within its rights, i.e., because it made a decision that to affect mandatory issuance of insurance, that it could also obligate the mandatory purchase of it. The second strand I see is self-insurance affects the market, and so the government can regulate those who self-insure. And the third argument, and I see all of them as different, is that what the government is doing, and I think it's the argument you're making today, that what the government is saying is if you pay for if you use health services, you have to pay with insurance, because only insurance will guarantee that whatever need for health care that you have will be covered, because virtually no one, perhaps with the exception of 1% of the population, can afford the massive cost if the unexpected happens. This third argument seems to be saying what we're regulating is health care. And when you go for health services, you have to pay for insurance. And since insurance won't issue at the moment that you consume the product, we can reasonably, necessarily tell you to buy it ahead of time, because you can't buy it at the moment that you need it. Which of these 3 is your argument? Are all of them your argument? I'm just not sure what
let me try to state it this way. The Congress enacted reforms of the insurance market, the guaranteed issuing community rating reforms. It did so to deal with a very serious problem that results in 40 million people not being able to get insurance and therefore not access to the health care market. Everybody agrees in this case that those are within Congress's Article I powers. The minimum coverage provision is necessary to carry those provisions into execution, because without those provisions, without minimum coverage, guaranteed issuing community rating will, as the experience in the states showed, make matters worse, not better. There will be fewer people covered. It will cost more.
So on that ground, you're answering affirmatively to my colleagues that have asked you the question, can the government force you into commerce? And there's no limit to that.
No, because that's the first part of our argument. The second part of our argument is that the means here that Congress has chosen, the minimum coverage provision, is a means